Hello friends and welcome back to the Little Welding Shop on my YouTube channel. Today I want to change a little bit the format of what I usually film and put on this channel. As is in my description on my channel, this channel is intended only for what I find interesting, what I find as a hobbyist interesting to do. But this time I want to change that and I'm going to start talking in a series of 10 to maybe 12 vids in the form of vlogs on a more personal level uh, about something that has been my profession for the past 17 years now, and which is professional software testing or quality assurance engineering. All right, so these two are basically the same thing, but we'll get to that. There are small differences, but basically they are the same thing. The reason why I am doing this and I'm doing this in this format, yeah, with face cam and direct to text, is because I want this to be a more personal approach and to reach as many people as possible in the software industry, but also in the hardware industry and anywhere else where something is developed and after that needs to be tested. All right. So think about it. You have a software program that you are trying to release, but before releasing it, you need to test it, and we'll discuss why. But also, if you are a hardware manufacturer, if you're a knife maker, anything in this world that you are producing and you're trying to release on an open market, beforehand, you need to test that product to make sure that, well, it reaches the minimum criterias of safety and functionality and design that you, as a producer, as a business, you want to send out there, as I said, on an open market, and you want to attract as many customers, and you want those customers to respect you as a business and to keep on buying from you afterwards. All right, uh, why? Why am I doing this series of videos, these vlogs? Well, there are two reasons. First of all, personal reason, of course. You have to have a personal reason in everything you do. And for me, would be that, hey, talking with you guys and you guys listening and maybe even commenting back to me, giving me some feedback, will help me become a better professional, but also maybe a better speaker. And this time I am doing these vids in English, although the rest of the videos on this channel are in Romanian because I'm Romanian. And this time I'm doing them in English because I feel a bit rusty in my English language set skill, and I want to practice a little bit. But also, as a professional software tester, as I said, I've seen for the past 2 years a trend in software development companies that kind of scares me a little bit, worries me, and let's discuss about that first in this intro video before we move forward. Also, I intend to make these vids 15 minutes, no longer than 15 minutes each, because this way I think I can capture your attention fully. If 15 minutes are exceeded, especially when we discuss theory, it's a dry subject, uh, I might lose your interest and I don't want to do that. So 15 minutes each video, right? Now let's discuss a little bit about my second uh, motif or reason for doing this video log series, all right? So in 2019, I noticed something really worrying for the software industry, and that is budgetary restriction, constriction, whatever you want to call them. Companies are trying to reduce as much as possible the allocated budget for development centers. And the first place that they are looking to make budgetary cuts is in the testing departments, all right? And they have maybe, if you want, a reason to do that, right? So in 2019, different books started appearing regarding software development companies and the way that they should restructure to become more efficient. And one of these books or ideology is the DevOps transformation book, which kind of converts the development department and the IT department into a single entity, which is DevOps, right? Many companies have already adopted this ideology. And what basically this says is that this book, I mean, a developer or someone that is working in development should also be a good IT technician. Therefore, you do not need two separate departments, one for developing the application and one for maintaining maybe the build domain, the build environment, and so on, and mix them together. And you will have, instead of 10 guys working for the same product, you will reduce it to maybe 5, right? So that put a little bit of stress on top of everything that you have to do in the normal life cycle of developing a product. You also now need to pick up some IT specific routines, for example, server administrations for your build environment. So not production, but still. Um, you now have to be also a build engineer, because you know, according to this book, you don't need a specific man that will handle the build system. So now one of the developers in the team needs to do the build and manage the build and monitor the build and so on. You no longer need someone to debug certain pieces of servers or other machines in the environment. Another guy from the development team needs to learn to do that, and so on. So by this, you are basically cutting the budget that you allocate to your development team, but also you are doubling the workload, or maybe tripling it at some points, that one guy has to do for that. All right. So basically doubles the workload um, of the guys that you have previously working as software developers, and I will call them software engineers all of a sudden, because yes, they have apparently overnight developed skills of also not only software development but also IT administration, um, and so on, as I discussed earlier, right? So yeah, a great way to cut budgets, but in other formats, maybe some of those people will not agree to, you know, taking on board such an increase in change in their professional style, let's say. Now, on top of that, in I believe late 2019 to 2020, another book came into play, dropped out of nowhere, and this one, I believe it's called Inspired. I just remember that. I have a few notes in front of me, but I didn't remember the name of the book. But anyways, so Inspired takes this a step forward, right, and say, hey, DevOps transformation is great, but what if we can apply this new ideology in other different branches of the software development business, right? Like now you have 5 guys that are doing also the part of development, but also the part of operations, right? IT operations, as we discussed earlier. How about if we start cutting budgets in other locations as well, right? So how about if developers that are now DevOps, system engineers, and stuff like that, right? They can also pick up the role of software testers, because who needs testing, right? That's another piece of ideology that I don't see the point in really putting that on paper, but it is. It's currently in a book called Inspire. Look it up. So, and again, this is another book that speaks about a new ideology in software development business, and many companies start to pick it up and try to apply it in the real world. So ideologies usually are theories, but when you try to really put them in practice without doing market research first, then you start to really get to the belly of the beast, let's say, right? So because of these two ideologies, businesses, right, software development companies say, oh yeah, we can cut budgets. Let's start cutting budgets. And instead of having proper specialists in all these key positions, like IT operations, maintaining servers, software development, software testing, now you have like a third of the manpower that you needed before, which I agree is a great thing if you can achieve that. But now one of those guys that are still working for you need to do the job of three different professionals that you had in the past, right? So I'm going to insert right now a little picture that I think says it's all. Now let's continue the discussion. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I think big companies and small companies that are developing software have started to put in practice all this stuff just for the sake of saving money. But instead of saving money, I think they are doing a big mistake and transforming the the way the customers looked at them as professionals into some kind of a joke. And they are very surprised when they are starting to lose customers. All right? I don't want to spend any more time on this topic. You can comment and tell me if I'm wrong. I will answer to all the comments as I can. But now, also in this introduction, I want to speak about the three key questions that you really need to answer for yourself, even if you're a company, a business, or just the professional, or maybe a hobbyist that is interested in testing and want to pick up testing as a profession. That it's very important to clear out right from the get-go, right? So these three questions are right here on my screen. First of all, why do we test? Second of all, what do we test? And third of all, when do we test? All right. So really fast, because I'm getting to the threshold of 15 minutes. Why do we test? Well, look at things that Microsoft, Apple, big companies have done in the past, and the big bugs that really came out when they were doing their marketing stuff, their publicity stunts and stuff like that. Look at Microsoft, look at Apple, and many others.
Just plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device, and it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build,
those things could have been avoided if they allocated the proper time and resources for software testing beforehand. In that moment, those companies with great names, they look like fools because of some little things that simply escaped the allocated time for testing, and they reached out the conclusion that they should allocate more time for those, which is great because now Microsoft produces things that are really good, right? Operating systems that are on the market and pretty much in every house for the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years, right? Apple, the same, right? So, yeah. Now, what do we test really quickly? So you have a product, you are sure that that's the final uh, product that you want to release on an open market. Now, that thing you need to test it. And we'll talk about it because there's a testing life cycle just as well as the bigger picture, the development life cycle, right? So we'll talk about that in a future video. All right, so now when do we test? Well, this is the final question, of course, but also a very important one, right? So you will often in this profession get answers from your manager when you put this question, when you address them this question, if you will, and the answers will be like as soon as possible, or right now, or do it 2 days before you ask me this question. So these are like typical managerial approaches to some of the stuff in general. But now let's discuss this on a professional level. And as testers, you will find yourself in the situation that basically testing is not up to you, especially when you start testing something, right? So you have allocated developers that are working on something, and those developers need to basically put their pen down and say, hey, I'm done coding. All right. And in that moment, you as a software tester can say, all right, let's put a freeze code or a code freeze, a freezing of the code, if you will, a combination of these two. And then when you have a product that is finished and no one is touching it code wise, then you can actually start testing. All right. Furthermore than that, you have to prepare in advance while your assigned developer or developers are working on the code and are trying to achieve a finality of their application or bits of the application or new feature or something like that, or maybe they are working on a bug. You can test bugs, of course, that have a production relevant SR ticket, for example, and it has reached back development because it escaped a prior testing stage, let's say, right? So in each of these cases, you have to talk with your developers and tell them, hey, look, you're working on this feature. Cool, that's cool. While you're coding, I'm going to write these tests. They are called test cases, by the way. They are going to be included in a bigger test plan, which we'll discuss when we'll see what that is. And I need your opinion about it. I know you're very busy, but I need your opinion about it and tell me if these test cases are relevant to you as are to me, because I, the software tester, know also the business point of view, right? The customer's point of view, but also I know how this looks from the perspective of the code, right? At least some bits of it, because I'm not a developer, I'm a software tester, but as a software tester, I also know a little bit of coding practices, right? So let's discuss and see if these test cases are relevant to you as are to me, all right? So these are the three questions and how you can reach an answer for them. And if you reach an answer for them, then you are ready to get on board with professional testing. All right. So this is it for this episode. This will be the intro, and we'll start breaking up the topics of software testing, and we'll see how that goes. Right. So thank you, and see you on the next one.